Coming up on KCCI 8 News Close-Up. 1 year into leading the World Food Prize Foundation, former governor and former U.S. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack joins us to talk about the fight to feed a growing world. A Libertarian candidate says he's fighting against the two-party system, why Thomas Laehn says voters deserve an independent voice in Iowa's U.S. Senate race. And 3 Iowa farmers are going viral with a message that could change Iowa agriculture, how they're hoping to help make a difference for rural communities across our state.
You're watching KCCI 8 News Close Up.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us for KCCI 8 News Close Up. I'm Chief Political Reporter Amanda Rooker. Iowa is known for helping feed the world, but here at home, 1 in 8 Iowans is struggling with food insecurity. This morning, we're taking a closer look at the fight against hunger here in Iowa and around the world with someone who has spent decades working on agriculture and food policy. Tom Vilsack served 2 terms as Iowa governor before going on to serve as U.S. Secretary of Agriculture for many years under 2 separate presidents. Last year, Vilsack became the first CEO for the World Food Prize Foundation, working to fight food insecurity and to bring global leaders and Iowans together to find solutions. Governor, thanks so much for joining us this morning. We really appreciate it.
I'm glad to be here, but I wish you hadn't used that younger picture of being sworn in.
Well, talking about looking back at the past, we have a lot to talk about on food insecurity, but we know we're about 3 months away from the midterm elections, and there's been a lot of talk about this being an election of a lifetime here in Iowa. Some of what's happening this election cycle kind of reminds me of back when you won the governor's office in 1998. At that time, you became the first Democrat to win that seat in, I believe, 30 years. When you look back at that experience, what factors do you think enabled you to break through, and do you see any parallels to the election cycle that we're in right now?
Well, I think Iowans at the end of the day want a balanced approach to their government. They don't want to go too far right, they don't want to go too far left. And in 1998, one-party control of the governor's office and of the legislature, I think, led to some dissatisfaction with the direction of the state. And I was the beneficiary of that. I used to say it was time to rotate the crops, something which many Iowans could understand. And I think we're facing the same kind of situation today. We've had one-party control of Terrace Hill for an extended period of time and one-party control of the legislature for an extended period of time. And I think the question is whether or not Iowans are satisfied with the direction of the state, and if they are not, whether they're willing to make a change.
Was it retail politics, message, kind of things that you think enabled you to win that office?
Well, we did focus on very specific concerns that Iowans had at the time. There were healthcare concerns. There were concerns about our public education system. There were concerns about taxes, and there were concerns about the future of agriculture. And I think many of those issues are still with us today. I think Iowans are deeply concerned about what's happened with our public education system. I think we have always prided ourselves on having one of the best education systems in the country. That was certainly true when I was governor. That isn't necessarily based on rankings today, necessarily true. And I think Iowans want to make sure that our kids have the best possible chance. And to have that, they have to have great schools.
You said rotate the crops. I was just on a town hall tour with Rob Sand, and he used that line as well. I know Josh Turek is talking prairie populism, kind of like Tom Harkin did back in the day. So it seems like some of those messages are coming back up on the campaign.
Well, it's just a question of whether or not people believe this is the time for change, or whether they're satisfied with the status quo. I think obviously there are a number of situations surrounding this race, high gas prices and things of that nature, that I think people are concerned about. The economy, people are always concerned about. I used to say that it was time to make Iowa the food capital, which was really focused on creating a better opportunity for our farmers. And certainly today, there's a lot of stress out there in farm country.
And I want to talk to you about that and globally, really, food insecurity that our world is facing right now. This marks 40 years of the World Food Prize Foundation. What impact has it had over the last 4 decades?
Well, one of the goals and responsibilities of the foundation is to lift up this issue of hunger and food insecurity. You mentioned 1 out of 8 Iowans. Just to give a number on that, that's about 385,000 Iowans. And unfortunately, tragically, 1 out of 6 children are food insecure. And when you think about our state, you think about the productivity of our state in terms of agriculture, it really ought to be unacceptable to every single one of us that we have 1 out of every 6 of our children food insecure, which means at some point in time in the month, they are simply not going to have enough adequate food. We can do better. and we need to do better. And the World Food Prize Foundation's job is to make sure that people understand not only the problem, but also the solutions. That's why we had the Hunger Summit this week, where over 100 organizations came and talked about best practices, talked about the people that are in the fight, if you will. We have enormous volunteers and people that run these food banks and pantries. They're doing an amazing job. The faith-based community is engaged. The corporate world is engaged as well. Our grocers are doing a terrific job of helping people in need. We want to make sure that there are full partnerships here, and that includes the government.
We know that every October the Borlaug Dialogue brings leaders and experts from around the world to Iowa. What conversations do you feel are the most urgent this year?
Well, I think it's across the board. Global food insecurity is also on the rise. 733 million people in the world today. And again, focusing on children, about 60 million of those children, of the 733 million people, are under the age of 5, and they're going to be stunted in their growth because of lack of food and lack of proper nutrition. It's one of the reasons why we engage as part of our efforts to pack meals for people in need. We just did over 40,000 meals this week, and we're going to make sure that those meals are available to people here in Iowa. But we've decided to take on a very large challenge here. We've decided that it's time for Iowa to set a world record. And that world record needs to be focused on the number of meals that can be packed in a single hour. Well, it turns out there's an outfit somewhere that did about 533,000 meals. Our goal is to try to pack 600,000 meals in 1 hour. That's going to require several thousand volunteers, really coordinated, packing those meals and putting them in boxes, and then making sure that half of those meals benefit people here in Iowa and the other half benefit people overseas. So we're going to try to not only lift up the issue of poverty and hunger, but we're also going to try to do something about it.
When is that supposed to happen, and what do you want viewers to know if they want to help?
Well, it's going to happen on Tuesday, the first day of the Borlaug Dialogue, which I think is October 20th. We're going to pack those meals at the Iowa Event Center. We have the location. We'll obviously need volunteers, and we obviously need to have folks help us cover the cost of the meals. It's about $175,000. We've received about 2/3 of that in terms of committed donations and commitments. We're looking for help in that space as well.
Now, overall, kind of talking about food insecurity, you've recently warned that recent changes to federal policy regarding SNAP could have an impact on food insecurity and impact on the food assistance system in general. What are you expecting, and what do you think Iowans should know about that?
Well, the legislation that was passed by the Congress is the largest single reduction in our food security programs in the history of the program. And it impacts and affects already somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 million people nationally. About 24,000 Iowans have already lost their benefits as a result of these new rules. There will be additional cuts and additional reductions over time. So long as the state of Iowa maintains a good error rate in calculating benefits and getting benefits to people who are actually in need, we may not face the penalty that may come if our penalty rate exceeds 6%. I think we're a little bit under 6% now. If we go above 6%, then the state of Iowa is going to have to come up with $50 to $60 to $70 million of additional support for the program, which means that additional people may lose their benefits and/or it may impact and affect the state budget in terms of education and healthcare and all of the other public safety and all the other things that state budget goes through. So it's a really very difficult time. To give you a sense of the magnitude of these cuts, Feeding America is the largest organization committed to food banks and the network of food banks and pantries. Their work basically creates about 6 billion meals, the equivalent of 6 billion meals. The SNAP cuts that were enacted by Congress basically eliminate 6 billion meals. The entire work of Feeding America with a stroke of a pen eliminated. So we've got work to do as a community. We have to step up. We got to pick up the pieces here, and we have to make sure that we do what we can. And then I think government needs to do what it can.
Is all the time that we have for this conversation. I know we could talk a lot more, so we'll have to have you back on. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
And when we come back, the group of Iowa farmers using social media to push a new vision for agriculture, why the Lobe Rangers say conservation pays off for both the land and their bottom line. Welcome back to Close Up. 3 north central Iowa farmers are taking to social media to share conservation practices they say can help their farms and their bottom lines. KCCI Chief Investigative Reporter Suzanne Benke talked with the so-called farmfluencers, hoping to change how other farmers think about protecting Iowa's soil and water.
Zach Smith, Matt Borman, and James Hepp farm in north central Iowa. Together, they call themselves the Lobe Rangers.
We run our farm on it's a 3-legged stool, I always say: profitability, environmentally sound, and agronomically sound, and they all 3 run together. And this water quality thing correlates with more profit and better life.
Borman debunks that conservation and making a living can't work together.
On the profitability scale or side, better nutrient application, more in-season nitrogen, results in less nitrogen and less going downstream and less leaving your bank account. So this is a way. Currently, the commodity prices aren't that good, and with the war in Iran, the fertilizer and nitrogen prices are through the roof.
They've put themselves out there in a big virtual way. It's a risk they say they're willing to take.
You get to a certain point in life where you're just like, some things are more important than being afraid or necessarily money. And if you want to do positive things, sometimes you have to take some chances, and we're definitely doing that.
Another goal: making sure Iowa's rural communities persevere by making smart, intentional change.
We need to do things differently, so that's why we do it. And I want to build something where my kids someday will think this is such a great opportunity they can't afford not to come back. Where so many kids, there's no opportunity for them to come back. I mean, I don't want to have to drive 50 minutes to go get something like a hardware store.
The Lobe Rangers online messages come out weekly, tackling current topics.
Whatever you've been wondering, just ask.
If we can figure out ways, and farmers could figure out ways to adopt all this, it all runs together.
They went the virtual route to speak directly to farmers who may hesitate to plant cover crops or go no-till.
It makes life better for me, and I see that as a vision for Iowa.
Near Bode, Suzanne Benke, KCCI 8 News, Iowa's news leader.
And this weekend, James Hepp opened his farm to the public for a free field day to show people what the Lobe Rangers say is already working with conservation farming and water quality. Still to come on Close Up, he's a county attorney, a libertarian, and now a candidate for U.S. Senate. Why Thomas Laehn says the major political parties are failing voters and why he believes Iowans are ready for a new direction. Well, I'm joined now by Thomas Laehn. He's the Libertarian candidate running for Iowa's U.S. Senate seat. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, glad to be here, Amanda.
Well, for viewers who may be still getting to know you, what do you want them to know about your background, both personally and or professionally?
I'm married to my wife, Susan. We have two wonderful children. Our daughter, Sophia, is 7, and we have a boy who's 1 named Felix. I'm currently the county attorney in Greene County, Iowa. I'm at the end of my 2nd term. In 2018, I was elected county attorney as a Libertarian, becoming the first Libertarian to hold an elective partisan office in the state of Iowa, and then was re-elected in 2022. I grew up in a little town called Allison, Iowa. Did my undergrad at Drake University here in Des Moines. Left the state for 10 years, but I knew at some point I'd want to come back and start a family and raise my kids in a town like the town I grew up in, like Allison. So I went to law school at the University of Iowa, earned my law degree, and shortly thereafter ran for county attorney in 2018.
It's a big jump from running for county attorney to running for Iowa's U.S. Senate seat. What made you decide the time is right for that and to run for that office?
So when I was elected county attorney, I swore an oath to defend the Constitution, which is the same oath every elected official in the United States swears upon taking office. And I believe the best way I can fulfill that oath, the best way I can defend our Constitution, is by running for the United States Senate. Our country's in trouble. When we pledge allegiance to the flag, we pledge allegiance to the republic for which it stands. And that word has lost its meaning. The Constitution says that Congress makes laws. Well, they've stopped doing that. Presidents now make law by executive order. The Constitution says only Congress can declare war, and yet here we are in the middle of another war not declared by Congress. The president unilaterally took us to war without any consent from Congress. And the president is not to blame. Our founders anticipated that presidents would attempt to expand their power. It's really Congress who deserves the blame. They have abdicated their constitutional responsibilities. They are more concerned about raising money, meeting with donors, meeting with lobbyists, running for re-election than they are to do their duty and to legislate and govern and keep the president in check. So that's why I'm running. I am running to fulfill my oath to defend the Constitution of the United States.
If you were elected, what would you do about that as just one member of the U.S. Senate? And on top of that, what do you want Central Iowans to know about your top priorities that you would try to accomplish for them?
Great, so I'll answer those questions in order. First, a senator has the right to stand up in the Senate and call attention to the fact that there's no one else in the room. Both parties, Republicans and Democrats alike, have been equally complicit in defrauding us. 20 years ago, I had an internship in the United States Senate. And I was shocked and dismayed when I got there when I realized that when you go to the Senate floor, there's only one senator in the room talking to the camera. The other 99 are off meeting with lobbyists and donors and fundraising and doing the things they think they need to do to get reelected. They're not actually in the chamber deliberating over bills, legislating. If I were elected to the United States Senate, the first thing I would do is go to the Senate floor and demand a quorum. They should not be doing business on the Senate floor unless there's at least 51 senators present. My number one priority, if elected, is to defend our property rights. As you know, there's this scheme to build a carbon capture pipeline across our state. I helped draft the legislation that Governor Reynolds vetoed that would have stopped it. And it's the biggest boondoggle in the history of our state. Federal tax credits are being provided to carbon dioxide capture companies. The project actually doesn't do any good. It will do more harm to the environment building the pipeline than it will do good capturing carbon dioxide. But more importantly, for this project to proceed, Summit Carbon Solutions, this company, has to be vested with the power of eminent domain to take property from landowners along the pipeline's proposed route. This is a clear violation of the Fifth Amendment. Property should not be taken from private landowners unless it's for a public use, and this isn't a public use. Its only purpose is to enrich the donors to our legislators. Congress could very easily put a stop to this by eliminating the federal tax credits that are funding the whole scheme.
In order to accomplish some of those things in the U.S. Senate, to win the Senate seat, you mentioned Ashley Hinson. Both her and the Democratic nominee in this race, Josh Turek, have the support of national party networks behind them. They both have name recognition by holding state or congressional office. What is your path to victory in this race?
That's a great question. So, I've won office twice as a libertarian, so I believe I'm a credible candidate, and the people of Iowa are ready for a credible alternative to our broken two-party system. Josh Turek is running against Ashley Hinson, the Republican. Ashley Hinson is running against Josh Turek, the Democrat. I'm running against the two-party system itself. And we know from polling that 63% of Americans would prefer to vote for a third-party candidate. So if everyone on Election Day goes into the voting booth and votes their conscience, I will win in November.
To have a third-party member be elected to any congressional office is not unheard of. We've seen examples of that, though it is relatively rare. If you were elected, how would you work logistically in terms of the two parties caucus? The two parties have speaker in the House. They have speakers. In the Senate, they have majority leaders. What's your promise to Iowans on how you could legislate effectively, without just withholding or supporting a vote between the two parties in the Senate?
That's a great question. First and foremost, the people of Iowa could be confident that I would vote based on principle, not on party loyalty, not because I've been influenced by some PAC or interest group. Many people have asked me, if I'm elected, will I caucus with the Republicans or the Democrats, which I think was part of your question. And my answer is I would caucus with whichever party is not the party of the president. So if the president is a Republican, I'll caucus with the Democrats. If the president is a Democrat, I'll caucus with the Republicans. Because the purpose of Congress, one of the purposes of Congress, is to hold the president in check. And the problem is when members of Congress get elected who are Republican, they are more loyal to their party. And if the president belongs to their party, they are more loyal to the president than they are to the Constitution, the very document to which they swore an oath when they were elected.
You have won as a libertarian, as you mentioned, twice as county attorney. How do you replicate that at a statewide level?
Yeah, when I ran for county attorney, many people I trust and admire and respect, including my own father, said just to run as a Republican. Right? Greene County is an overwhelmingly Republican county. Run as a Republican. It doesn't really matter. And I just couldn't. I could not in good conscience run as a Republican or as a Democrat. Against the odds, against good advice, I ran as a libertarian. And I proved it can be done. A libertarian can win in an overwhelmingly Republican district. And I think we can replicate that statewide. At the end of the day, the people of Iowa will vote for the person rather than for the party.
And my final question for you is, in part, maybe some of what you mentioned there. If you were able to have 30 seconds with an undecided voter, what would you tell them about why they should vote for you?
Because I would be a true independent voice in Congress who would owe my loyalty to the people of the state of Iowa. Unlike, as I said, Ashley, who is running against a Democrat, or Josh, who is running against a Republican, I am running against the two-party system itself. And we will not have real change in Washington until we elect third-party candidates to office. I'll just give a couple quick statistics. We know, for instance, that 87% of Americans want members of Congress to be subject to term limits. We know that 77% of Americans want to reduce or eliminate the role of money in our elections. The true divide in America is not between Republicans and Democrats. The true divide is between the people and a parasitic elected class who are more concerned about staying in power and maintaining their power than they are about serving the people who elected them.
Well, Thomas Laehn, thank you so much for making time to chat. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, Amanda, thank you very much for having me.
And Close Up, we'll be right back after this break. Stay with us. Thanks for joining us this morning. Have a great day.